Thanks, Britt. Welcome, everybody, back to, I think it's actually our fourth review panel. I know we have it listed as 6, but we had some technical issues that needed to cancel a couple, and appreciating everybody being here today. Thank you, David, for letting us know. We are going to start just with an overview here. So a reminder for our review panel that we're here as a part of the Oregon Administrative Rules and Process that was set forward on how to have our RFGA applicants approved and move forward so that we can distribute the funds that we have. The first phase is what we're doing. We had all of you review and score our applicants, and now we are here to begin to put forward a burn model for each county that is close to within the at least initial base budget that was allotted in the funding formula. And just a reminder that this can all be adjusted or reviewed once the Oversight and Accountability Council is reviewing it, because they have final authority on the spend plan. Next slide. Today, we're going to do exactly like we did last time, where we'll have the reviewers provide a brief summary of the applicants. We'll have the team present a potential burn model that's within budget, and reviewers can provide their first comments, thoughts, and then discuss options and amend the model if desired, and then go to a vote. Just some housekeeping. I'm not sure that I need to read all of it, but we are live streamed, and we are keeping the chat feature closed to keep the discussion concise, and continue with all your grace and respect of each other and the solid discussions that we had. And roll call.
Okay, oops, give me 1 second. My sheet went away. Okay. Amy.
I'm here.
Hi, Amy. Dharma. Hubert. Keisha. Melinda. Morgan. Nicole Silva.
I'm here.
Ron Williams. Seb let me know he cannot make it today.
Here.
Oh, hi, Ron. Abby is out. Ariana. I saw you join. Ariana, are you still here?
I am. I was
Okay.
having mute button issues.
No worries. Ane.
I'm here.
Dana Bowman. Daniel Garcia.
I am here.
Hello. Danielle Cartwright. David Corse.
Here.
Drew Simpson.
Here.
Elizabeth Padilla.
Here.
Emily Pertu.
Here.
Evelyn Salinas.
Oh, she's not here yet, but she told me she will join a little bit later.
Okay, I'll watch for her. Thank you, Daniel. Grace. Gregory Bledsoe. Greta.
Here.
Hannah.
Here.
John, Judith, Juliana,
Here.
June Bernard,
Here.
Kathy,
Here.
Kylie, Kirsten,
Here, good morning.
good morning. Liz,
Here.
Luann, Mark Jansen.
Yep.
Maya Wolf, Nicole Corbin, Nicole Egler,
Here.
Rachel Lawrence,
Here.
Sam Byers,
Here.
Sarah Adelhart,
She is off on Fridays.
Sarah Hubner, Sean McMahon,
Here.
Stanley Minetti,
Here.
Tammy,
Here.
Tatiana. She sent me a message saying she would be gone. Or
And here through. the-
okay, that's right. It was the last half. And Tim Scott. And we have quorum at 26.
Terrific. Thank you. And thank you all for being here. Before we get started, and we're going to start our morning with Curry County, I just wanted to reflect back because we debrief after each review panel to see if we can make improvements or have, gathered information from you that is, we could potentially leverage and make this process a little easier, even though it is a very challenging decision-making process that we're in. One of the things that came out yesterday that seemed to bring some rhythm to the panel was the idea of first potentially deciding on how to move the burn forward in terms of which providers would move forward. But I think one of the other pieces that really seemed to help the review panel move forward was also thinking about, in order to meet the budgetary, get us close to a potential budget for the county to pass to the OAC for consideration or adjustment, was looking at what percentage could we make some cuts, and then if it was across the board with everyone, ensuring that the OAC knew that the council could make adjustments to that, but that in those instances, the providers themselves, through the negotiation, would make the decision on where to take those cuts in their budget so that we weren't imposing something that potentially didn't make sense or could be, negatively impact their programming, where they could make adjustments in a different way that could be less impactful. So I wanted to pause there, see if there were any thoughts on that, and see if that felt helpful. And then we will move into Curry County. All right, I think we have a call for conflicts then. So this is a call for conflicts for Curry County. You can see in the upper right-hand corner the programs that we'll be discussing. This is a call for any potential conflicts or actual conflicts of interest. Thank you. All right, Curry County. Let's, Carly, let's go to the slide that just describes the county. All right, Curry County is in the southernmost part of Oregon. It has a population of 23,404 people. The poverty rate is 12.4%, and the unemployment rate is anywhere between 6 to 7%. The economy is based on tourism, agricultural, and natural resources. It has a rural, small-town atmosphere with a focus on preserving its natural beauty and environment. It's a lovely way to say that. Next slide. Okay, so Curry County, the base funding formula that we're starting with is $3,927,379.18. We had a total of 6 applications submitted. All 6 passed scoring. And the total county wide ask is $9,784,313.25. That's a countywide difference of $5,856,934.07. Carly, I'm wondering if we could just quickly jump to the slide where we do weight working with culturally specific providers and to show what we're actually the amount that we're needing to. I think it's the next slide potentially. So when we've done the actual weighting and prioritization based on the council's values and the intentionality of Measure 110, the amount over is really $3,749,791. So I just wanted to make sure that folks saw that before we went into discussion. Okay, we can go back a slide. So a reminder that the green squares mean both reviewers said yes to this applicant. The blue means only one reviewer recommended the service area for this provider. And then the red is that neither reviewer recommended the applicant for this area. With that being said, I want to open it to those that did the review of the applications here to give just a few remarks about the strengths and challenges with the, if any, with the entity you reviewed. And I'll pause and you can raise your hand. We can start with any one. Amy.
Hi, I reviewed the Oregon Recovers in Curry County, and their application was very thorough and everything, and the services that they provide was harm reduction. From what in here, hold on just a second, I'm looking. Sorry. Yeah, this is with Oregon Recovers. So I like the harm reduction. That's why, because harm reduction is super important, especially, you know, out there. And they one of the things in their budget. So when they broke it down, you know, they listed what mileage, they did everything. They did break it out for the 4-year, you know, and then their total ask. I think from what I'm seeing here, I'm sorry, hold on.
It's okay. We're facilitating a lot at the same time. You're doing great.
Yeah, I did like their application, you know, and I think that it's an important piece that is needed in a burn, you know, and so that's why I went through it. And if anybody has any questions, I mean, I've got it pulled up right now.
Amy, I'm wondering if you could share with the review panel the types of harm reduction activities they're doing. I know that's come up for the review panel, and then we can have counterparts also weigh in.
So they're wanting to purchase a van to and build an onboard and onboard team development. They're gonna launch the digital Narcan tools, and then they went to here to develop, like, they're gonna have printed resources, and there's the plan on establishing partnerships. So this is like an introduction, which is more or less, startup.
It's a startup.
I got out of it. What I don't have, hold on just a sec. I don't see them being a past recipient, but when I downloaded the applications and stuff, I didn't, I'm sure I can find it if you want me to. I didn't keep like the written out narratives. I kept my workbook.
Yep, yep,
So that's what
Okay.
I can go off on here.
yep, thank you.
Mhm.
And Hannah, I think, are you the counterpart on?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just yeah, echoing what Amy shared, that they did provide responses, and most of them were detailed. As far as activities, the program activities included expansion of digital tools, local peer support services, overdose prevention training, targeted digital advertising, development of printed intervention tools, outreach to young adults, and people in Curry County through outreach and partnerships with local hospitals, schools, emergency services, and then providing Narcan administration training and dissemination of Narcan. I will say I did score them lower on questions 7, 8, as they didn't provide detailed, like a detailed response to how their organization provides culturally and linguistically specific services. And I think they just quoted them. We don't currently provide this, but can and will immediately adapt the website and mobile app for Spanish, for Spanish, and then as soon as we're able with other languages coming soon. So they did provide some context, but their equity questions, it wasn't sufficient experience in providing either like trauma informed or culturally and linguistically specific or responsive services. Or services to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. However, they are mainly uh, like a online platform, and they do utilize the Oregon Helpline to provide services. I did recommend them for funding. Just one of my concerns for both peer support and harm reduction. I think my concern is that their budget for peer services were a bit lower than kind of what I see the impacts of peers or the peers roles. And just made a note that um, the budget for peer services being lower could be a concern for workforce and sustainability. Also, let's see, sorry. Uh, and yeah, and then they also partner with their, I think, parent organization. Trying to go through. Yeah, but I'm gonna pause there. Just wanted to piggyback from what Amy said. And then as far as Medicaid, they responded to one of their questions. I don't believe that their services do qualify for billable. However, they do have experience managing and accounting for grants. Um, and so just wanted to highlight that. Oh, and that they have managed many grants over 7 years, and have received grants from Care Oregon, so they do have some experience tracking and managing expenditures.
Thank you. Stanley, do you want to tell us who you reviewed?
I had Boulder Care,
Great.
and Boulder Care had items of substance treatment with low barrier substance disorder treatment and telemedicine, peer support, And they were just sharing that supporting with resources and screening and assessment during the individual treatment plans. And then harm reduction. They're eligible for Medicaid and other insurances. Their sustainability would be engagement, outreach, and partnering with CCOs and value-based payments. But again, they did not provide the cycle of the grant funding as in other conversations that we've had previously.
Great, thank you. And I don't think Grace is here today, but so Greta, I'm gonna go to you for our next applicant.
Thank you. So I reviewed HIV Alliance for their housing and harm reduction services. So this is they're not currently part of the burn in Curry County, but they are part of 7 other burns in different counties. So they have a history. They also have a history of being in this community through other funding. So they have a really great partnership that they mentioned with ADAPT. And I will say that they much of the funding that is in the harm reduction category is for staffing of these services, not so much for supplies. They did request the purchase of a van, but the rest of the supplies were very minimal. And the housing was really just to help supplement people into hotel respite and the small financials to get them into housing. So it's a very good application. They seem very connected to their community. Of course, they're providing, well, maybe not of course, but they are providing services to those that are populations that are most at risk, specifically trans and gender diverse. Criminal justice, houseless, homeless, and the BIPOC is some of their specialty areas. And if they aren't able to provide a culturally specific services, they have really great partnerships of culturally specific services in this community. So I think they're very well connected to this community. And this is an expansion. The funding is an expansion of the services that they're already providing.
Thank you. And Zeb, I know is not here today. Ron, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question really regarding the Oregon Recovers proposal. Is this the time to ask?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So in terms of the harm reduction budget, my understanding that their budget is very, very low in terms of peers, but I'm just trying to wrap my mind around the fact that because it's a mobile app and it's an online platform, what makes up the bulk of the budget? If I'm trying to figure out if Narcan, for example, is their primary service delivery, that's what they're primarily delivering, what else makes up the budget?
Thanks, Ron. So, Amy, Hannah, I think if we can get some clarity or even from support from our 110 team that is looking at the, some of the budgets as well, just distinguishing, Ron, am I capturing it correctly just in terms of what is the Narcan distribution versus their digital work versus their direct peer service?
Right, like what makes up the 800?
How is it broken down? That's great.
Where'd it go? Okay, sorry. Okay, so when I have it pulled up and under the milestone chart, and they listed program year, what their plans are. Part of it is purchasing the vehicle and onboarding the team development, launching the digital Narcan tools, and then outreach. And then when I went over here, let me go back over here just a sec here. Let me grab the narrative over here. Okay, so it lists out the salaries for 25% of one peer navigator outreach worker, and 11% payroll taxes. 25% is a benefit package per FTE and worker comp MOD rate of 1.34, 100% of mileage at 67 cents per mile at 400 miles per week, and 25% of payroll processing fees, $55 per pay period is by
Well,
month.
they have 1.25 FTE is the only staff.
Right, so I'm looking on here. And if they've got their peer navigator and outreach worker on here. Let me look here, hold on just a sec.
And I think they have they want a contract with two folks to support this launcher work. They have listed yeah, contract services, and that's listed twice. If that offers some.
I have 2 full-time professional development. Targeted digital advertising is, oh, let's see, hold on, here we go. 2 FTE professional development, the budget of 1,500, and that's CRM certifications, attendance for 2 conferences, and a leadership development. That's for professional development. So it looked, I'm for what I'm reading, they're looking at hiring, or they are hiring another one, and they have one. Because I'm seeing here's salaries and wages, 75% of, they're hiring the peer navigator outreach worker, and then a full-time employee as well. So like a part-time and a full-time. It looks like, Ron, that they're hiring. Or
Ron,
what
I
the
think,
narrative looks like.
thanks, Amy. Ron, I'm gonna just also ask my team if as you're looking at it, I'm gonna have Drew and Tim talk about some other applicants, but Ron, let's see if we can get you, I think, looking at like what percentages for digital, what's for direct service, what's for peer work, I think is your
Right,
question.
that's kind of what I'm after.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
and it's okay, you know, you did great.
Oh,
So
well,
Jason, can we maybe just take a look at that, and then Amy will come back once we start looking at the county as a whole, and you'll have a chance to also look through the budget.
okay, because it's on here. I got it pulled up too.
Okay, okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
Drew?
Hi there.
Hi.
Reviewed Adapt in Curry,
Thank you.
and you know, they have a long established history of providing these services around the state, not necessarily in Curry County. They also are a previous recipient. I did recommend them for funding in their requested areas, but with some pretty significant reservations. You know, clearly established demand, community need. They have the expertise and the history in the community, but they listed in their application staffing shortages is a significant challenge in the past. And looking at their past recipient amounts and expended, it shows that they may have a hard time leveraging funds that they receive. In their last cycle, in their previous awarded their for 1.6 million, and they've only expended 300,000 of that. And so without having a reason to think that their staffing changes are going to be resolved, they might have a hard time actually leveraging any received funds. That said, not all of their funding requests, I think, are highly dependent on staff, especially like the housing aspect. So yeah, that's the long and short of Adapt. I would recommend with caveats.
Thanks, Drew. Tim?
I actually also had some questions about Oregon Recovers harm reduction program. I don't know if this is that moment, or I'm happy to wait until a more appropriate time.
Well, let's there's always every time is appropriate, but let's see if we can just get some information. Is there anybody who reviewed Brookings core response? And if not, I'm wondering if my team could just read a little overview about that applicant and then, oh, hi, Tatiana.
Okay, and I'll squeeze this in before I have to leave at 11. I was one of the reviewers for Brookings Core.
Great, thank
Yeah.
you.
So just in general, you know, again, as a new reviewer, it looks like they're relatively new on this, in the landscape of this work. They were funded last time around, but just really submitted a really high quality proposal, complete comprehensive responses to all the prompting questions. They also just applied for peer support, and I think that was really reflected in the application, their understanding of kind of where they are in their own organizational development, how they fit within the overall landscape of the burn in their county. They aren't currently billing for Medicaid. They don't have those systems in place, but they already have a contract with their local CCO. And so it seems to demonstrate that they have the administrative systems in place to be building that capacity over time. So just recommended funding for them. It's a relatively small ask. And then if funded, to continue to offer technical assistance as they continue to explore their Medicaid reimbursement options. So I'll stop there for now.
Thank you. Okay, so now we can let's open it for discussion. Tim, I want to go back to you so we can add your question into the harm reduction piece, and then I'll go through any other questions.
Sure, thanks. I was curious, I know there's for Oregon Recovery's harm reduction program, I know there's specifically a question around how they plan to do outreach and meet folks where they're at, because as it's been described, it sounds like they're doing, like they have a website, they're doing outreach in schools and to like first responders, I think is what I heard, but I didn't hear any reference to doing outreach specifically to people who use drugs, which seems odd. And it also sounded like they're new to providing this service. So those kind of things together made me kind of concerned. So I'd just be curious how if they discuss specifically how they're going to do outreach specifically to people who use drugs.
Great, thank you. June, is your question in the same category or a different one?
No, I wanted to talk about harm reduction also. I heard about all the proposals and recommendations. I have real concerns with Boulder Care and Oregon Recovers not having that foot on the ground, full continuum of harm reduction services. HIV Alliance has the full continuum, so it's very difficult to see that. And I also want to say, just knowing Curry County, Brookings Core is all of these organizations have well, most except for Oregon Recovers that I'm aware of has a footprint there. So I just want to say that Brookings Core has been established there doing peer services for some time. They're not a new organization.
Thank you. Amy, Hannah, or my 110 team, our 110 team staff, wondering if we can give any further details just on like what is, as June described, kind of the boots on the ground and what Tim is talking about versus more of a digital package or like sort of Narcan training as opposed to direct service work with the folks who are most in need.
I definitely hear y'all, and hey y'all, this is Hannah. Those were my similar concerns, just as far as it being more virtual and them going through. So they were, sorry. It was more so virtual, utilizing the Hope line and then going through MacBo for training. But as far as having like a like a footprint in the community, that was also my concerns with questions like 7 and 8. It's like how familiar they are with the area and the community. And as far as their harm reduction, it from how I read it, it was mainly with just mainly around Narcan, and then the providing like the digital platforms and education and awareness. And yeah, I guess I'm gonna pause there. I don't know if that was helpful, but just echoing that.
Jason, can you talk about the program costs at all?
Yeah, let me get back. I was trying to look at the program, this question, but what about the program costs on what specifically?
Well, just looking, is there anything that the review panel, as I look at it, we have Boulder Care with her with an $11,000 program cost. But looking at HIV Alliance and Oregon Recovers, the program costs seem to be, am I looking at this right? Like double for one versus the other, and just wondering if there's any insight there.
This is Amy. I can read off what they put in the budget, proposed budget, for harm reduction
Okay.
in the narrative. You want me to read that?
Sure.
It says, of course, the targeted digital advertising is ads served via Google, Meta, and other digital relay services. Harm reduction supplies are Narcan and food and water for houseless communities, as well as HIV test / STI tests, syringes, etc.
How much is that?
I'm sorry, what?
How much is that?
That is, so targeted digital advertising, they have it at broke down like this. Targeted digital advertising is 60,000 for year 1, 2, 3, and 4. Recovery community engagement, 7,200 each year. 20,000 for harm reduction supplies each year, and 3,000 for travel each year, and 3,600 for telecommunications for each year, and then printing and distribution for costs. They have nothing under the first year, but the second, third, and fourth they put 60,000, which is quite kind of high, but that's what that's what it's broken down.
Thanks, Amy. That was helpful. June? Ron, sorry, before I move on, do you have any follow-up there in terms of what you heard?
No, it's clear to me where the
Okay, thank you. June?
Yeah, I just want to preface that $20,000 a year for a full harm reduction program is like supplies is just does not work. That is very, very low.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
I have a quick clarifying question. There are some people who have been on the review panel that have subject matter expertise or programmatic experience with some of these providers that we're reviewing, correct? And I've heard a few people be able to chime in and kind of speak to the general background and knowledge they have of that provider. What I would like to clarify as a Measure 110 grant administrator, do we have the ability to speak to their operational background, not necessarily how they're performing in the grant, but what services we know they do render when having these discussions, or would that compromise the integrity of the review?
So my understanding, Elizabeth, is that when we review, we have to review based on the application that was submitted. And because this was treated as a new RFGA, we really are reviewing based on what we have in front of us. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Tim?
I was just wondering, I'm just kind of looking at the 944s around harm reduction, and I'd be curious, doesn't it seem obvious to me that the digital campaign necessarily meets the definition of low barrier intervention? That, I mean, if a lawyer might have a more, I don't know if it quite fits in that 944. It doesn't, obviously. To me, it honestly sounds like a prevention activity, which is different than what harm reduction is. And it kind of feels like it's being pushed into the service area where it doesn't quite sound like appropriate.
Yeah, appreciate that. Carly, do we have a couple of slides coming up where we get to see more what we have without the, we're looking at a difference of 3,749,000. The next slide, do we have anything? How we can prioritize? Here we go. So now we're looking at just what received yeses. Next slide. Sorry, there's a little black square coming over. Oh. Okay.
Is that the one you wanted?
So now we're starting to look at potential ways that the review panel could look at the burns. Can you scroll down just a little bit so we can see? Oh. And I think if you just share the kind of the document, that will also help too.
Okay, which slide did you want? I'm sorry, everything closed on me.
Yeah, that's okay. I just where we have next slide where we put together some potential pathways to form a burn. And I think this is where for the review panel, it's starting to think through like what potential proposal and what types of funding recommendations could we move forward to the Oversight and Accountability Council for consideration. Keep in mind, we're just the first review. The council makes the final decision and also can adjust any recommendation that we make. So these are just pathways for us to begin to move forward. June?
Sorry, my unmute button. I really like what's suggested below. I think that is a really good, a really good suggestion. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
So on the lower section, example proposal 2, I'm looking at does that show? I can't tell. It looks like there's a line through the Oregon Recovers Harm Reduction. Am I misreading that?
Right. So we have hands up, but Jason, Kathy, do you want to walk through this particular slide in terms of what we're offering to the review panel?
You are seeing that correctly, Ron. There are strikeouts on those, and that's removing that from.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
great.
And then also just being clear, are both proposals allowing the review panel to consider a burn that is coming within or close to the initial suggested funding formula?
No, the top one is, oh, go ahead, Kathy.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jason.
I was just saying, so the top one is all of the assets over, the county formula is at the top there, the 3.9, and the total and the top one is that 7.6, right? So it's over by quite a bit. So that's why the strike throughs happen to try to bring it down. And the bottom one you can see is right at that 3.8. So it's coming in just under.
Thank you. So the first, just as a reminder, then the first one is taking out the no's, obviously, and then it looks like also removing any numbers where there was only one reviewer that said yes. That still brings us in at 7,677,000. The strike through shows you that you would have a burn where that does come in just slightly under the suggested initial budget that came from the funding formula, where we would have screening done by ADAPT, SUD services by Boulder Care, peer support through Brookings Core Response, housing and harm reduction through HIV Alliance. And hands are up. Liz. Thanks, Jason, Kathy.
I have two things. The first, on the example proposal 2, I'm really leery about the idea of only having one service provider per service area. You may have participants who aren't comfortable with a certain organization, or maybe for some reason they can't go to that organization anymore. So we're not giving them any other options in this case. The second is, I think there's a minor math error on Oregon Recovers. On that second example, it shows both numbers crossed out, but the entity request NTE is still the same as their program costs.
On the second, yep.
And that's all I have.
Thank you. Ariana?
I just wanted to point out, well, I didn't quite see the math error that Liz is pointing out, but in the second example, the difference between the total countywide and the requests is 42,513 and change. And I wanted to put forth the idea that we could give that to ADAPT for assessment as a total, because that's the difference. And then we would have them doing assessment and screening. That's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Ariana. Emily?
I just wanted to say that I'm not sure how I feel about the second one and not having any local, like in-person SUD treatment, and just having it be through a telehealth agency only, with Boulder Care being the only one in the SUD treatment category. I also, maybe someone can help me with this. I'm not sure how, in like the harm reduction category, what was used to I guess decide who remains there and who doesn't. Was it just based on the scores?
I believe it was based on scores. And this is just a proposal to begin to start thinking about how to put the burns together and how to begin to come within budget. I am wondering on the team, just looking at the math on proposal 2, can we double check what the NTE is on that? And then also just confirming, can we go back just so we can see who, if anyone, applied for assessment? So looking at this, and whomever reviewed ADAPT, I apologize that I'm blanking on that right now, but I do see like a 0 amount, and I know that assessment is, may be just put into their SUD service dollar amount, but want to confirm that as well.
ADAPT was me. This is Drew Simpson. I'm pulling it back up so I can
Thanks, Drew.
confirm.
They may have put a 0 amount in to say, yes, we'll be doing them, but they did not need, the funding for it for that particular service area.
Yeah, well, I voted no on that one. I was confused. Yeah, because they did. Yeah, they just put nothing in there's no narrative included in the budget. I'd have to get back out the main sheet.
Yeah, thank you. Harley, can we go back to option 1 and 2 again? Sorry. Ron?
I just want to echo, I think it was Emily, it may have been Liz. Their concern regarding no in-person SUD treatment in the county. That would be of concern to me.
Yep. Thanks, Ron. Let's double check the NTE and see if what we have in terms of the final amount there. And then remember, we can, as a review panel, begin to shift things around a little bit to see if we can make sure that the burn is put together in a way that feels like a good recommendation for the council to consider.
So in that second option, the 38,84865 is the correct total, even though it's correct to point out that 167 should have been removed from the column above it. It's not being added to that. So that is the correct NTE of that group.
And that, thank you. And that leaves us with, I'm trying to do math in my head here. How much left over? Like
42,000.
42,000. So we have 42,000 and the ability to move some funding, you know, to think through the funding a little differently. Greta?
I just wanted to point out a little bit of concern about the housing category of eliminating the application of ADAPTS housing. I don't know what that exactly entailed in the application, but for the HIV Alliance, that was just really a small amount to help subsidize. So I don't know if that is really adequately putting together a burn for this county in the housing category, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. Drew, can you talk about what they said the housing funds were for?
Yeah.
Thank you.
They have a project with another entity, Lucky Lane and Brookings, that is going to fund some, I think it's 2 permanent family units. And I think it was 4 additional units. And that was expected to, the project is like, it's ongoing right now, expected to be completed in 2025. So it's to provide emergency housing. I think right now they use it through motel stays, and this would be for more permanent solutions for family units.
Thank you. I also want to you know, remind everyone that one option that we looked at yesterday was to put forward we can remove, I guess, any providers that the review panel is like, I'm concerned that does not, you know, seem like what we are trying to achieve in the burns, and then move forward the rest and look at what kind of percentage across the board it would take to come close to budget. And where I'm hearing the primary concern was around the harm reduction of Oregon Recovers and potentially Boulder Care. Jason, I'm wondering if we removed those 2 and move forward everything else, what kind of a percentage would we need?
And sorry, let's just to repeat that, remove.
So if we look at the first proposal, but just take out only the harm reduction for Boulder Care and Oregon Recovers, how much, you know, what's the NTE with that? And then
Sorry.
You
So
know,
take
do
a
we
harm
wanna-
reduction for
Yeah.
Boulder Care and Oregon Recover. So I'm doing it live here in my
Yeah,
spreadsheet.
no problem.
Okay, so then so all of the greens other than Boulder Care and Oregon Recovers harm reduction, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that would put us at 6.5 million, so 2.6 million over. Let's see.
One other area that I heard some strong thoughts about were potentially on the peer support and June. I see you raised your hand there. Said that.
I just want to know, did ADAPT mention anything in their application about the housing that has already been funded with federal funds?
Drew, can you see that in the application?
Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah. Did ADAPT mention anything about their current housing funded through Measure 110 in their current application?
Yes. It was their housing in the narrative was fairly brief. So from their current funding, they were providing the emergency housing through the hotel's main intention there is to help with people transitioning back to the community and doing short-term housing. From their previous funding, the new funding would be for expansion to permanent housing.
Just given the feedback of the review panel, Jason, can we have you do real math again? I can see on the second example, we only have the one peer support provider. If we removed the peer support from ADAPT, I'm assuming that brings us down to 5 million.
Yeah, that would bring us down to about 5.2 million, which would be then sort of like a 25% reduction would get to the suggested cap at that point. So it's still over, but we're getting into that realm.
Put that out for the review panel for thoughts. Liz?
Just some clarification on ADAPT expansion. We didn't fund capital this round, so when they talk about expansion, does it say like what they mean by that?
This is Kathy Cervantes with the Measure 110 team, and I'm looking at the fiscal and technical narrative for ADAPT. And on their long-term sustainability, they do talk about the HRSA main federal funding source of the organization, also has a recurring revenue component that further sustains the organization and services directly and indirectly related to the burns.
Liz, did that answer?
I'm not totally sure.
Basically, they have federal funding going on as well. That's probably it's not real clear that that's exactly what they're doing for those federal funds, but my guess is that they have other funding sources that are putting those housing in place, because we don't have that on the Measure 110.
Drew, how brief is their housing summary? Would you be able to be part of it to us?
Sure. I mean, it's not that long, and it doesn't all refer directly to Curry County. So Adapt has referred people into our service for housings for decades. In 2014, the agency started its first housing project and has continued adding more as the opportunities present themselves. In Douglas County, the agency has 2 active housing projects, 2 remodels, and are planned for completion in February 2025, 2 more in development, expected to complete in 2025. These units will provide strong support for people trying to get off the streets and into recovery. And then let's see, there was a separate. This is also fairly short. We are building a project with a working name of Lucky Lane in bookings starting 2024. We'll include 2 BHR and funded permanent family units and 4 BH units. Let's see. These are funded by another grant, are expected to complete 2025. Phase 2 is planned for development to add more units serving this population in the next few years.
Liz, is that sounding like a capital project?
That's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah. Based on, oh, sorry, go ahead, Drew.
Yep, that's all.
Okay, thank you. So for the review panel, based on what you're hearing, any suggestions on the housing piece for ADAPT, understanding that this round we are not funding capital projects?
Just to confirm, Jason said that was new purchase of new housing? Or no?
Emily?
Hi, I'm super sorry if you've already given this, but from their budget, not their project scope, is there clarity in their housing costs? And if it's going to capital versus rent or something else?
One moment, I can pull that up.
Elizabeth? Well, you're doing math, Jason, or looking. Elizabeth.
I was just wondering, because this is a really critical question, right? We're discussing the potential of funds going towards something that this bill technically isn't supposed to be funding at this point.
That's right.
And we're not technically allowed to bring this back to the applicant. We can't get new information. How do we, aside from this conversation here, is there going to be another opportunity if they move forward to address that concern? How do we ensure it doesn't happen that way?
And so I can I guess address real quick. In the budget, it does say the Lucky Lane property supports 2 family units. This funding provides rental costs for permanent supported housing for the 2 burn family housing units and permanent supporting housing for 2 of the 4 behavioral health housing units. These funds will pay the rental costs for the first 3 to 6 months and then supplement the rent to keep it affordable.
And to be clear, these entities do not exist yet, is that right?
I don't know about that. I mean, I'm just reading up from the budget that the Lucky Lane property that
Tim would have more information on that.
Yeah.
Tim?
I'm not sure if I have more information on that, but what I heard, what Jason read that stuck out to me was that it sounded like they're subsidizing rent and then or covering clients' rent totally, and then they're just trying to subsidize part of it to keep it affordable. But in the 944s, aren't all services supposed to be provided to no cost? So that sounds like not an allowable arrangement to me.
So I'm hearing a couple of different concerns about ADAPT's model of housing. Both, it's unclear if there are buildings that need to be built, and also there's a cost to the housing as well. To their own housing that they're building, I think. Rental assistance, yes, Emily, that's true. But I think, Tim, if I'm understanding you correctly, it's that if they have their own housing and then they're actually somehow funding that temporary placement in there, is that right? That you're concerned about?
I mean, to me, what it sounded like Jason said, and I could have just misheard, is that they are providing rent for clients free of charge for a period of time, and then they subsidize a part of it to keep it affordable. But it should be 100% no cost if it's a Measure 110 housing service. They can't charge. Yeah.
Great, thank you. June?
Yeah, so I rose my hand before Tim said it. So yes, this housing, if it needs to be free because some of it was already paid for with Measure 110 dollars, right? So it doesn't make sense that they would be paying themselves rent.
Thank you. Emily?
So I think, so it sounds like this housing is being paid for through outside funds. And then once they're built, that they are going to help folks with their initial rent and then provide rental assistance as it goes on. So I don't think it's necessarily Measure 110 funded buildings that are then being, that then clients are having to pay for. I could be wrong about that, but that's just how, I didn't read this application, but that's what my understanding was. I also don't think that housing that was paid for through previous Measure 110 funding is indefinitely, I don't know what the rules are around that for like a building or any other thing that was paid for through Measure 110 funding, like how long that has to be provided to clients free of charge moving into the future. I don't know if anybody at the program can speak to that, but that seems like it could be difficult, especially for organizations who aren't refunded in this grant cycle.
So I think Kirsten, and then I'm going to ask the review panel, based on the concerns that you're hearing and the areas of certainty that you're hearing, the desire for folks to have choice, for someone to make a motion, at least to get us started. Go ahead, Kirsten.
I was just going to say, if there was anything in the review around other resources for rent for housing in the community. I know self-sufficiency sometimes has rent or the medical card. And so is it something that could be provided by other community resources? And I would think that analysis would be really helpful to make a determination around whether we want to include it in this.
It is not part of their project scope.
So I'm going to pause and see if there's a member of the review panel who would like to at least start with a motion. As you know from yesterday, it got amended and changed, and we are still in that place, but I do want to move us forward on Curry County. June.
Yeah, I would like to motion to accept the example proposal 2 below.
We have, can we just keep that proposal up so folks can see?
I'll second.
And Ron seconds.
Was that for proposal 2?
Yes, so we have a motion on the floor from June to move forward with a proposal 2, to forward that to the Oversight and Accountability Council for consideration. We have a second from Ron. Discussion? Okay. Carly, let's take a vote.
Did you want that slide still up?
Sure, let's do that just
Okay.
so as we're voting, people can really see.
Okay, Amy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dharma, I don't believe she's here.
Yes, with
Oh,
concerns.
you are. Hubert? Keisha? Melinda? Morgan? Nicole Silva? Ron
Yes.
Zeb? Oh, he's gone. Ariana,
Yes, with concerns.
Ane,
Yes.
Dana, Daniel,
Yes.
Danielle, David, Drew,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
Emily,
No, because of the lack of in-person SUD.
Evelyn,
Yes.
Greta,
Yes.
Hannah,
Yes.
John Malkovine, Judith, don't think she's here, Juliana,
Yes.
June,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yeah.
Kylie is gone, Kirsten,
Yes.
Liz Fernley,
Abstain.
Luann, Mark,
Yes.
Maya's not here, Nicole Egler,
Yes, with concerns about the telehealth versus in-person SUD issue.
okay, Rachel,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Sarah Adelhart, did she join? Sean McMahon,
No.
Stanley Minetti,
Yes, but concerns with the virtual and not in-person SUD treatment.
Tammy,
Yes.
Tatiana, she's still here. And Tim, are you still here?
Yeah, I'm here. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I think you cut out, but yes.
And that passes with 22.
Thank you. I think that let's make a note that this proposal passed with 22, but there is a concern that the review panel wants to put forward to the OAC, and that is this particular formula lacks an in-person said provider. So we want to make sure that the council has that for consideration. Thank you. So I know we don't have a lot of time left, but I do want to start one of our largest counties that we have seen in our review panel, and that's Clackamas County. So before we get started, let's just pause for a second while Carly brings up the call for conflicts. Hey, this is a call for let's go back. And there's I'm seeing like a sort of blacked out square over your over the providers in some way. There we go. Thank you. This is a call for conflicts for Clackamas County. As you can see, we have a number of providers. This is for any potential conflict or actual conflict of interest that you might have. Ron?
I just have a question. The list above that names all the providers and list of folks who met minimum standard requirements are different. Those lists are different. So my question is, if an
Those lists are different. That's right. This these were all the applicants. It is not everyone who met minimum requirements. That's right.
And so part two of my question is, if has the appeal period concluded for appealing not meeting the minimum standard requirements?
We are completing those appeals, yes.
Okay. Completing or completed? Sorry, I don't mean to.
They're not completed because there's a timeline, right, for each one, and so we are reviewing the appeals and then responding.
Okay. And so if you're on the list of, if you're on the list above, you could still be in the mix.
No, what should be coming up are the folks in the green. There are people on the list, and this is our mistake. We'll review that did not meet minimum requirements, and we will double check that next time. So when we come up on the screen of all the providers that were reviewed, you'll see those are the ones that did pass the minimum score requirements.
Right, because that's my issue, is that the list of providers that met minimum standard requirements, I have no conflict. But for the list of all applicants, I did have a conflict, so I'm trying to navigate that.
Ron, do you want to state who the conflict was with?
Yes, Red Lodge Transition Services.
Thank you. I don't recall seeing Red Lodge as having been reviewed, but can we double check that on this list?
They are part of the not meeting MSR.
They are on the list or should not be on the reviewed?
They should not be on the reviewed list.
So,
the last three on that list, the Folk Time, Go the Distance, and Red Lodge are all part of the not meeting MSR.
So we will not be reviewing them, Ron, in this process. Thank you.
So many apologies. I just want to own that I'm the one that put all of the applicants on there. My brain is zapped. So so many apologies, Ron, for that confusion.
In that case, I don't have a conflict.
Okay.
Thank you. That was great. I'm glad that we walked through that. Carly, can we let's go to the little slide about Clackamas. So Clackamas has a population of 423,173 individuals. The poverty rate is 6.6%, and the unemployment rate is 3.7%. The median household income, I feel like this might be one of the highest we've seen, is $100,675. It's got a diverse economy. But their challenges remain in addressing housing affordability and access to services. The county itself is recognized for its education systems and outdoor recreational opportunities. Before we get to all of the detailed slides, can we, next slide, let me see if it's on this one. So here we have the applicants that met the minimum scoring requirements. The countywide suggested formula is $21,937,428.32. We have 22 applications that were able to be reviewed and scored, and 22 of them passed scoring. The countywide ask is $70,778,716.91. That's a difference of $51,026,469.70. You know, I think when we talked about this getting harder and really beginning to look at some decisions being made, when Abby described saying no to some people, this will probably be one of our first big counties where we're faced with some of those challenges. And I believe that when we weighted the prioritization, it brought the countywide difference down to, I don't know if we can see that slide, or if, Jason, if you have that off the top of your head.
Keep going.
Next slide. And next slide. So here's the countywide formula, suggested formula. The recommendation totals, when we look at folks that were had reviewers that said yes to both applications. So the amount that we are looking at being over is 44,576,000. I want to pause there and see if there's any comments or questions. Ariana.
Just a point of perspective, I would like to say that it's important to bear in mind that we are not usually the only funders for, especially for established places. So it's, to me, mildly terrifying to look at not funding people, but especially in the more urban counties, there are often other funds available besides Measure 110. So just wanted to offer that.
Thank you, Ariana. And we'll also learn about those that can potentially offset some costs with Medicaid. Some won't be able to, but we'll be able to have that conversation as well. Amy? Baby.
See the slide that compared the compared one that were what was approved and how many were green? Yeah, that one. Thank you.
Yeah.
Want to see? I did a couple in this one, so I just want to see what's going on here.
Yeah. Well, I thought, because my assumption is we do not have any time. We want to be thoughtful on our first really, really large county ask. My thought was we could begin to just hear very briefly about the services of the providers that had two greens, and then come back for our next review panel. You will all have this slide ready to discuss some different scenarios for the county to begin to look at what a burn might look like. Elizabeth?
This current slide that's in front of us right now, are these all the providers? Oh, okay, thank you.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
what
I was going to say, no way, that can't be. I don't see the ones I looked at.
There's
Thank
two
you.
slides worth. And maybe what I'll do is I will give one other option, and that is, and then we'll absolutely take questions. A third option is for us to also pause here, commit to really reviewing these slides in some detail before we come back together for our next panel review, which would pick up with Clackamas. Tammy?
Sorry, mute.
No, you're fine.
Just a quick question. The next to the name of the agency and then in apprentices is a number. Can you please clarify what that number is?
Yeah. Kathy?
That is the weighted look at our prioritization and whether or not they can bill Medicaid and fulfill that one priorities that we have been directed by OHA and the OAC to consider. So we looked at the scores on questions, I believe it's 7 and 8 in the fiscal and technical part of it. And that's just the total of the scores. And as we've discussed before and talked about this before, those are scores that don't necessarily mean that they answered it wrong. They fulfilled the answer on it, or they didn't fulfill the answer on it. So, but that's what those numbers are, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thank you for clarifying that.
Mm-hmm.
And just want to acknowledge in our last review panel yesterday, there was some discussion about whether or not those scores were particularly helpful in capturing the priorities of the council and the composition of a burn, but they are there just as a starting point and an opportunity for conversation. Liz?
I just want to kind of point out a concern I have about this slide. So I reviewed Harmony Academy. They only applied for peer support. So I'm a little concerned that these slides were made based off the budgets proposed and not attachment A, where they identify what service areas they're applying for. The reason I bring this up is because I didn't say not to fund those other services. I put not applicable. And they're not the only agency that I reviewed that struggled with the budget a little bit. So I just want to make sure that we're double checking the service areas folks actually applied for.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
I know we've said it before, but I just want to put out a friendly reminder with the total points next to the provider name. That just means that they answered the question in its completion. That does not verify the content. It does not verify the quality of the answer. So keep that in mind. They answered the question, but that doesn't mean they answered it well or that it aligns with the values of Measure 110.
So putting it back out to the review panel, would it be helpful for us to hear a little bit about each provider? I don't know that we necessarily, how many providers do we have that we're reviewing in total for Clackamas? 22?
22.
Yeah.
Yeah, 22. I don't know if you want to have all 44 reviewers.
Right. Calling for suggestions on an initial way to move forward. Dharma?
Should we maybe just hear from folks that had concerns about folks that are in the green here on the panel?
Sure. So Dharma's suggestion is that we hear where there were areas of concern or just some question, even if they received a yes. So in consideration, as we're looking at piecing this burn together, we would have that information. Any other thoughts on that? Kirsten?
I wonder if we could start with the providers that scored high on the equity and inclusion questions, potentially.
Yes. Is there a way to organize that?
Isn't
And
that
we
what
can
the
also
little
come
numbers
back
are, the
and-
11, 12s, all of those? Or no? I'm surprised Northwest Family Services only has 7 points.
It was a combination of 3, am I right, Kathy? 3 different questions, one which had a lot of components to it.
Correct.
And I think some of the people, they answered them really differently because I
Yeah.
saw some applications just cut and pasted those into their application, where others really went through and addressed each one.
So it's really not, it's just as Elizabeth Padilla said, that it's not based on the actual burn values on here. It's very, possible they maybe answered that question fully and completely and they got a 2, and where somebody maybe was not as explicit on there and they got a 1. So it's just, that measure is hard to put on that. Each reviewer has their own opinion about what was included and how well they answered that question. So it's based on the reviewer scores that are in there. And also, I just want to preface that $16 thing that goes across there. Legally, we need to put those in there because that was part of their workbook numbers. Those $16, when we sent those in and they had to fill them out and submit them with the application, they just primarily forgot to go in and delete those. So, but we put them in there because that's what came through in their workbook. And it's even though you look at attachment A and they've checked all the boxes and they marked which services they're looking for, I came across a couple of applications myself that had that in there, but we're bound to put what is entered in on their spreadsheet. So,
Elizabeth? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Dharma.
Oh, I was one of the reviewers for Northwest Family Services, and I was maybe the one that disagreed with folks then because I give them pretty low scores across the board. Because it felt like a lot of the application felt like it was like copied and pasted together. I actually didn't think that this passed at all as an application because I didn't see like milestones information.
Okay. Elizabeth?
Sorry,
I
it
wasn't
cut off.
sure if Dharma finished. It
No.
sounded
Oh, sorry.
you muted
Sorry,
her.
go ahead, Dharma.
It looked like parts of the chart, like on their milestones chart, like it didn't populate any information for me. And so I wasn't sure that it was a complete application. And then a lot of the responses for me felt like it seemed to mismatch on that form, like specifically the milestones chart, like it didn't match the past Measure 110 recipient form. That it's offered in a really confusing way on their application too. Like it felt like their information was really buried in the application. As far as their services too, it felt like they intend to provide a list of services, but they didn't substantiate how on like the gaps or how they're filled because they don't quantify the needs on their application. Like their low barrier doesn't seem clear. They just having a CADC doesn't seem to make something low barrier in and of itself. And some of the explanations do not make sense. For instance, they marked that the needs of rural Clackamas County with additional staffing, office space, and transportation to remove the historical barriers to treatment faced by rural people was not really a clear statement of how they're removing the barrier with their services. And then they didn't seem to have a lot of information about how they're collaborating with folks. They just had like a long list of entities on their partner form, but didn't indicate how they can provide a continuum of services, but that another agency can provide those services. So that like, for instance, they were saying like they can fill the gaps of services, but it looks like they were just making referrals to a lot of services there. And then there was a real lack of specificity on how they're addressing social determinants of health without quantifying racial disparities or patterns. They just restated the populations that they served without an intersectional analysis or anything to help show how they're infusing equity beyond just having services available. They partially address rural inaccess to care, but provide no information on how they're addressing racial equity, except they mention Latinx populations with no data on how they address racial disparities. And then they copied and pasted lists of services throughout their application. It felt like a really they lacked care and attention to the importance of the services being provided. Like they just copied and pasted a list of services on what they're doing for trauma informed and culturally and linguistically specific services. It felt like actually offensive when I was reading the application based on the lack of effort that was put into these sections.
Thanks, Dharma. I appreciate that. Just giving perspective on how scores are, how we're looking at those numbers and the thinking that goes into some of that. Elizabeth?
Dharma actually gave me the perfect segue into my thought, so thank you. I just wanted to remind people that when we're looking at the culturally specific services here, and because we have this weighted score evaluation, there is a possibility. I know I saw some applications where some providers, the way they were interpreting culturally specific services seemed to really be race-based services, but then in question 8, they had all these other alternatives and options available. And so I think I just want to encourage people to really think about what our baseline standard is when we're referencing the culturally specific services and having this discussion, and in relation to Clackamas County specifically, so Clackamas can get what they need. And I know we don't have all the time to look into that, but I just wanted to put that food for thought out there, that some folks may be cutting themselves short or overselling themselves. So we may want to make sure that we're really clear as a group what meets that threshold for our standard of culturally specific services.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And I want to underscore that when our 110 team did some listening sessions with culturally specific providers, they were very clear that they wanted to make sure that when an entity says culturally specific, that they are the ones providing the service, as opposed to referring out to a culturally specific provider who may not receive the funding for that service because of just it being a referral. So appreciating the comments, and given the time we have, I'd like to make a suggestion, and we can take down the slide, and then we don't have to vote on it, but I definitely want to hear back from the review panel. My thought is that we will end for today. The team and I and Abby will be back next week. We will come. I want everybody to make sure you're looking at the Clackamas slides. We can come back with a package that provides a little bit more detail on the culturally specific providers, and potentially come back with a variety of scenarios on the burns. On burn models that you can begin to have conversation on. Again, appreciating this is a very challenging task we have ahead, and with a significant amount of requested need and a limited amount of funds to go out. Any other thoughts that we could how we could potentially package this information for you in a way that would be helpful to facilitate conversation and come up with a recommendation? Emily?
I would just say, unless there's issues with the applications from these applicants, that I would like to see youth services funded. I know that there's a real need for those, so if we can take that into consideration, and when we're putting together the recommended options, maybe one where we do see those in there.
Emily, just to clarify, that we would only show the budget with the services and not program costs, is that, or did I misunderstand?
Oh, no. Just for providers that focus on youth.
Okay.
Services.
Got it.
Just knowing the importance of those, and a lot of them have funding right now, and I don't know what the impact would be if they would lose funding.
Okay, thank you. Ariana?
Not at all to discount Emily's concerns, but I was also looking at the demographics of Clackamas County, and 21% of the population is under 18. There are some really good providers that I saw that do serve youth, and I want to make sure they get funded. But I'm wondering if it would be appropriate to scale how much we fund them to what the population of the county is. That's just a thought, throwing it out there.
So looking at the packaging a model that's reflective of the composition of the county, and that would indicate need of service.
Yes.
Thank you. Dharma?
Yeah, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be available for the next meeting, and so I wanted to get out that I'm going to try to be there still, but that the Youth Era application was probably the best application that I read, and it's probably one of the stronger ones that I've seen as far as their services. To note from people's conversation here that they're valuing that the youth services one specifically, Youth Era application, was outstanding.
Thank you, Dharma. Nicole?
Since we're really going to have to narrow down our selection, yes, in addition to adding a column that show to their service areas that shows whether they serve youth or not, could we also add whether they do telehealth or not?
Thank you. Any other thoughts? What I'm seeing, I just want to confirm that I believe that because next week is we start getting into the holiday week, we do not have a panel review. It looks like the next one we have scheduled is on the 31st. So Tuesday, the 31st will be the next time we come together, and we'll pick up with Clackamas And the team and I will try to come up with the various scenarios that include your feedback now, the prioritization, and then just how the council has been providing feedback and concerns and priorities. Any other thoughts or comments before we go our separate ways for today?
This is Amy.
Amy.
I looked at Pathfinders and Iron Tribe, and I know that I had some concern with past Pathfinders because in their proposal, they want to buy 2 vehicles. So, I mean, there's some thought in there, you know, there's definitely like not, it didn't match up to what they were saying. I mean, of course, the need is there for offering services, but 2 vehicles, and it was a lot. So, I mean, there's stuff to look at there as well. And then with Iron Tribe, it was just pretty basic. They're looking to increase by 8 families with housing, but they're pretty established, you know, so I mean, it's, yeah, I mean, like we said, we could adjust that.
I think, you know, with your feedback, Amy, one request that I would have for the team and I is, as those of you that reviewed Clackamas, which could be all, almost everybody on the call, but those of you that reviewed Clackamas, just take a look over your notes, and as you're looking at the slide, thinking through, you know, as Amy is suggesting, like, you know, what is the request and how does that line up with the service delivery that we're seeking to put forward to the council, that's rooted in the council's values and the intention of the wraparound services that that the Burns provide. And then we will do our best to also bring forward visuals that help facilitate that conversation. If I don't see some of you between now and the 31st, please have a safe and healthy holiday. And thank you for just your work and thoughtfulness and the reviews of you've already done, and then being here in a really open discussion about how to best support our communities. Until then, we'll see you next Tuesday, or Tuesday after 31st.
We're having a 1 o'clock today, right?
We are, the council is. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Happy
Oh, okay.
weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.